Back in studio with the guys. This is sort of the get-right game for San Francisco. The road ahead, because of that Seattle win, doesn't look too bright in terms of winning that division and coming all the way back. But this is a feel-good win. This is one where you can shake off all of that conversation that was surrounding the team thus far. Was this more San Francisco finding their stride, Emory, or was this all the failures of Chicago in the first half, or somewhere in between?
It's kind of in between, but I thought this was the best game we saw from San Francisco all season long. They played their best on offense, their best on defense, and did a great job on special teams, not giving up cheap plays to Chicago. But when you talk about their offense, the run game was paired with the passing game, which was paired with the deep ball, which was paired to the intermediate game. So everything was working how it used to work when we saw San Francisco in their heyday. Now, granted, they're facing a team, new coach, new way of doing things, so they probably took advantage of that. But this was a great building block for this 49ers team moving forward.
I mean, I hadn't seen this much open green grass since I was on the golf course, and it's been a while. It's cold out here up in the Northeast, Mac. When you look at this effort specifically in the first half by the Bears, specifically on defense, I know 319-4 is going to be glaring, and that's going to point to offensive failure, but they couldn't defend nothing in the first half. What did you see effort-wise? What did you see execution-wise? Where was the failure for the Bears?
Team, they weren't prepared at all. And that's the most confusing part, because usually when we've seen teams make changes at the head coaching position in season, it really boosts the morale of the team, and the sense of urgency is usually there. For Chicago, it felt like Eberflus was still on the sideline.
Well, you look at this right here, Mac, because, again, you know where I come from. You know what I root for. Cardinals was a quit game. Patriots was a quit game. They couldn't get over the Commanders' loss. Then you come back and you find something and you change the OC and Caleb starts to develop and you're in a close one with the Packers, and maybe they block the kick by rule. Maybe they block it with a little bit of extra help. You get the Vikings team. It looked like a team that had turned around effort-wise. Why? How do you explain the lack of effort, the quit game, for lack of a better term, that we saw today?
It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at San Francisco trying to find a way to get back in the right path, you expected to see a sense of urgency for them. Then we look at Chicago, you're like, okay, good. Eberflus was supposed to be the bigger issue, the biggest issue. You thought you would see better execution on either side of the football, especially on the defensive side. That side was more alarming than anything, because you haven't been able to protect your quarterback the entire season. You allowed 7 sacks, so that's been the common thing. At least you've been consistent in giving up sacks, right? So that has been something to stay true to. But on the defensive side, in terms of all the wide receivers, pass catchers that were just wide open, that's not Chicago Bears like football.
It looked like the middle of the field as well was an issue today. Could you point to anything schematically?
Zone droppings. They were horrible in zone droppings.
Yeah.
When it comes to being able to play zone the right way, you have to communicate. You have to be transparent in understanding where I'm supposed to be, and you're supposed to know where your teammate is going to be. It felt like the communication was not there. You know, I coach my son's 11U team. One thing I always emphasize, we're not in a library. You guys can be as loud as possible. You can talk as loud as possible. You can communicate, because you need to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page, you're going to see holes surface in zone opportunities, and that's what we saw. And Brock Purdy had himself a day. Yeah. George Kittle had a day. Jawan Jennings had a day. Their defense had a day. This was supposed to be the San Francisco team that we watched the majority of the season. Even with some injuries, it still is a highly talented team, and today they put everything together to put forth a really good effort.
Yeah, a lot of layered balls right over Tremaine Edmonds' head into that second level of that team. Let's go positive here on San Francisco once again, because by the numbers and by the schedule, it's still in front of them. It's going to be a long road back, and they're going to need some help in order to find their way to the top of this division. Look at all the attrition. Isaac Guerrero even at the end of this one. How do you sum up the season that it's been for San Francisco right now, coming off this sort of win?
A lot of yeah buts. You know, if we had this guy, but we didn't. And so what I like about what we saw today is that they were looking like a team that, okay, this is going to be our reality. Let's find a way to make things work. So if this guy's going to be out, we're going to the next guy up. You always have to have that next man up mentality, and I think we saw that today. And to you guys' point about the Bears and what they didn't do on defense, the Niners didn't care. It's like, hey, that's y'all problem. We're going to do what we do, and y'all deal with that on y'all side. And I thought that was a great job, both offensively and defensively. But in terms of them running the football, that's what we wanted to see from San Francisco, and we've seen that all throughout the season. With any back they throw out there, I think that's going to be how they're going to try to get back in this fight for the playoffs.
And Joe talked about the fight for the playoffs. They're currently sitting at, what, 6-7, right? They're chasing the 8-5 Seattle Seahawks. You talked about that gauntlet the Seahawks have moving forward. Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, and the Rams. That's the remaining 4 games at 8-5. For San Francisco, Rams, Miami, Detroit, Arizona.
Yikes.
So you need Seattle to slip up twice. I don't know exactly the tiebreaker status, but for San Francisco, you need Seattle to slip up twice. It could happen against Green Bay, Minnesota, the next 2 ball games, right? And if that happens, if you look at the Rams who are playing inspired football, they already beat San Francisco once. If you know anything about the history of those 2 teams, they usually split, right? And if you get to Miami, Miami won today, but they haven't looked really convincing in their wins.
Yeah.
That could be an opportunity. So me personally, for San Francisco, today was a much-needed win. Not just to mention of winning the ball game, how you won. Because it could boost the morale of the team to be able to make a significant push to try to get into the playoffs and win their division, because that's the only way they can get in.
San Francisco and Seattle did split the prior matchups this season, so we'll be looking at strength of schedule, common opponent, and all the things that will then determine that head-to-head. But a lot of work between now and then, and we got a lot of work left here on Game Day Scoreboard. Plenty more coming here as we take a look at more numbers coming out of this one. Most consecutive starts with no interceptions.
That's a good thing.
In a loss. Caleb Williams, 7 consecutive starts. Did throw one ball that, Mac, I know you would have picked. Emory, you probably would have had it.
You said Emory probably.
I would have had it. Mac probably
one of us 3 played professionally defensive back, so I gave you the benefit of the doubt.
I appreciate it. That's deserving.
I mean, 2 rings got to get you somewhere.